Navy, and of course Air Force, and as well as having the most nuclear arsenal in the world. However, if we take a moment to take a look back, how would the United States fare in an all-out brawl between the rest of the world and their armies combined? So, first of all, what I mean by rest of the world, I mean by every single country in all the continents. Canada and South America, along with Central America, Asia, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Oceania. All putting aside any differences they have to basically fight against the United States of America. The United States would, to be honest, would last a long time, because they are able to support themselves, even if they have a lot of oil and food cut-offs. But eventually they would start running low, and the United States, even with its massive nuclear arsenal, doesn't have the manpower as the rest of the world combined. But that still doesn't mean shit. I thought today I would talk a bit about what the rest of the world could do, well, what would happen if the United States had managed to piss off every single country in existence and was forced to fight against them. Be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the little notification bell. Let's get started. Alright, man. Of course, we know the United States is having 51 states, including 2 that are not actually in the US itself. This is Hawaii and, of course, Alaska. Alaska, Anchorage, is mostly one place that supplies most of the US's oil and fuel to them for them to use for vehicles and ships and such. Not only that, but if they were completely cut off, they would be able to support themselves for a while on nuclear energy and other such. But the United States of America is one of the 2 largest superpowers, the other being Russia. How would it fare against an all-out brawl against the world? Well, let's take a look. The United States already outbeats every single country in the world with its Air Force, Navy, and armies. But some of the US vehicles and tanks and aircraft and such are, compared to most other designs, are pretty piss poor. The F-22 Raptor and even can be beaten by some of the newer Russian fighters and some of the new Chinese fighters. More of the newer aircraft and even some of that are being introduced by other nations are more than capable of taking out aircraft such as the F-22 Raptor and the F-35. That's to say because the F-35 isn't actually fully operational yet. Isn't that weird?
Allied forces have captured a zone. Defend the B point.
Let's not also think, but for these leading up to it, the United States has lost all military bases in countries that it's currently got military bases in. This includes New Zealand, well, every single country in the world, as they do. The US also loses out on some other things, including steel and rubber and stuff. Yes, the US is self-sufficient, but for how long? Let's also not forget most of its cities, most of the overpopulated ones, are located on...
The enemy is taking the initiative.
are located on the oceanic boards. The Russians don't even need... No one needs to really invade the US and to inflict massive damage. But let's say nuclear weaponry cannot be used. So let's talk about the nuclear weaponry. The US has the biggest arsenal of nuclear weaponry. So let's take a step back. How would you stop a country that has a massive nukes and lots of them, and the capability of them to shoot them anywhere? You jam them. The US systems have been hacked many times in the past. And it isn't even funny. Not only that, but the US would be met with heavy resistance from inside its own country. What do you mean? The United States has many Asians and other nationalities inside the US. These people could be, well, would most likely be arrested and placed into concentration camps, or even worse, torture camps. We know what the US is capable of, and they will do it. So back to nuclear weaponry. How do you stop nukes? You find them and get rid of them. You are the first people to find them. Throughout the Second World War, the European Union have produced some of the best spies, mainly French and Russian. This means that they would be more easier to get a handle on stuff. You fuckers. Oh, had they actually ignored me? Kill the Stug.
Attention to the designated grid zone.
The US also has one thing that doesn't have really much to do against counteracting spies. Let's move on to a more realistic topic. After the spies have found all of where the Americans keep their nuclear weaponry, the US would also lose out on quite a bit of things. After the spies would have found where the US keep their nukes hidden, the Russians and, well, satellite power would come into play. And before the US could possibly use them, they've been... I deserve that because I wasn't paying attention to my rear. That's what's good. Hang on a minute. Yeah. I should have bounced. Oh, you'll do this, bruh. Alright, we need to start capturing. I'm gonna go towards Bay. The The US now is not able to use nuclear weaponry, but by contrast have done the same thing by using their satellites in orbit to block enemy guidance missiles. Next, secret ops. Throughout the Second World War, and throughout history, America has had one of the biggest armies. However, they still managed to get fucked over by the British. Many times in the past. Oh. Well, that was quick. Because now that they've got an army, the US is unable to use this army, well, for one thing. They've already got troops on 2 different points. Canada, backed by probably Russia and other countries, have troops lining up at the Canadian US border. Not only that, but because of where they are, there are also blockades in Mexico as well, on the Mexican-American border. Alaska would have been invaded by Canada, Russia, China, and Japan. Fully, and would have wiped out any resistance of the US there. Even if the US could send air support, there is millions of Chinese soldiers with Russian and Canadian soldiers who have far more experience fighting in the cold than the US does. And let's not forget, the Canadians are some hardcore motherfuckers, and they probably do have vehicles that can easily counteract American air forces, as well do the Russians and the Chinese, and the Japanese for that matter. They'd also have aircraft carriers and other ships there. But I'm forgetting something, aren't I? The naval power. The first thing that would have to go would be naval power. The US has a naval base in Pearl Harbor. The furthest, because they're now no longer to send ships in any port in the world, they're only allowed to send ships between Pearl Harbor and, of course, Alaska, as well as the main bodies of the United States of America. Japan, the Asian cities on the south, along with possibly Europe, Africa, and, of course, South America and Central America, along with oceanic countries, would invade Pearl Harbor and take it over as quickly as they could. Because of this, this would quickly neutralize one of the US's massive ports in the Pacific theater of war. Because the US have now lost Pearl Harbor, and they would lose Pearl Harbor quite quickly. It's a small island, and it's quite far out to where you need to send your planes and aircraft. It'd be a waste of fuel. What am I researching? Like the Gladiator. The US now have to do one thing. So now that the US have lost Pearl Harbor and Alaska, both lost the entire island of Hawaii, the entire islands of Hawaii, and of course Alaska, that is now 51 from 51 states down to 49, if I recall correctly. So, if I watched American cartoons, so there's 51 states. But the US wouldn't give up that easily, and I know this is the US we're talking about. Naval forces would be sent against Alaskan forces.
Attack the seaport.
And because of this, many forces are unable, if at all, are wasted against combined forces from several navies. And yes, I know the US have missile carriers and aircraft carriers, but after they've all been shot down, badly damaged and sunk, or scuttled, how well do you think the US would last? How long do you think the US would last? Not very long. So let's put this in the position. After the forces around Hawaii invade Hawaii and take it from the United States of America, the US send in a massive fleet. However, they're met by a combined fleet of Russian, British, German, of all countries in the Pacific. A grueling 4-week-long battle between ships, bigger than some of the Second World War, is seen. And the US, although having superior might, begin losing.
Enemy forces have captured a zone. Allied forces have captured a zone. Artillery, point reference.
The United States, although having larger ships, make many bad, and I do mean bad, this is the US we're talking about, decisions which cost several key points in the battle, resulting in a large majority of US ships either being sunk or badly damaged. The badly damaged ships are either scuttled or boarded by the other navies. The US, of course, would be able to put up a lot of a fight because they have submarines, but so do the Russians and the Chinese. After a while, they would also lose the power on submarines because they would soon be, well, found. And destroyed. Let me guess, because it's a T-34, it penetrated my armor. I was at more of a 25-degree angle. That should have bounced! Jesus Christ, I'm getting pissed off at this game because they don't know the difference between bouncing a fucking shot, and they do. If a tank is angled at more than 25 degrees, it's an automatic bounce. Anyway, after the US have lost the majority of their fleet power, the rest would be called in to protect the mainland. This isn't a bad thing, nor is it a good thing. Because you've got many ships now blockading key ports and cities, they're all basically just one big spot. But what about a full-on invasion of the mainland? Well, after the US has lost many servicemen, they would have to begin training more. The Marines would also be effective as well, because they would be deployed at home guard. Basically, anything that the US would have against them would be counteracted by combined army strength. So what does this mean in the long run? Yes, the US would hold out for a while, but like it all, it would eventually be destroyed. I mean, if we take a look at Nazi Germany, they were able to outmatch and outperform everyone at the beginning of the Second World War. At the beginning of the First, it was a dead slog between everyone. If the US managed to piss off every single country in the world, so after that statement, what would eventually happen? Well, let's put it into this. The US would eventually lose air superiority because, you know, their fighters would be stolen and taken and would have had countermeasures adapted to them. The B-2 Spirit would no longer be a stealth bomber, as, again, radar and shit would have been adapted for them as well. Where, how, and what? Alright, you were over there. Well, you know, it would have got me right in the wheel track. And it managed to knock out all my bloody crew? God damn it. They need to work on their tanks. And that guy who was raging earlier doesn't know shit. You don't always go for one bloody 2 points. But no, Sherman tanks and other tanks with sloped armor need to be updated. Yeah, might as well do this and the things. Let me load out my British plane. Well, my American planes, actually, to be honest. Air assault. Yeah. After a while, even US ships, tanks, and other forces would eventually get just sick of it. There's also one other key thing people keep forgetting. It's morale. Oh yeah, we've had one victory in 3 months. That can do quite a bit of work hit on a person. Allow me to clarify. Let's say for 6 months the US lost every single battle they fought in. Now, you've got an army of, let's say they're fighting against the Canadians, the Mexicans, but they keep losing because Allied reinforcements keep landing there. And let's just say New York's been captured by Europe, and California's been captured by the combined forces of Oceanic and Asia. imagine how much crap your soldiers would feel. They would feel anger because one thing, your government's not allowing you to do much. You'd feel pissed off. You'd also feel quite depressed, and this is what I'm getting at. I know a lot of people will comment on here, but your facts are wrong. Actually, if you cannot boost up morale for your troops, then you would and will lose battles. Because morale, once it's broken, will be a pain in the ass to get. Whether that be soldiers refusing to follow orders, running away from combat, or doing nothing whatsoever, that can have a massive effect on the battle itself. It doesn't matter how good your army is. At the moment your soldiers have had enough, that's when you've lost. And yes, the fighting of war would have enough. In realistic hindsight, before the US could be pushed back, they would have invaded most of Canada and most of South America, most of Central America, as well as many other countries as well. But to be honest, I don't think they could get much done. I mean, all they would resort to is nuking them or sacrificing so many bloody soldiers that the US itself gives up. Other than that, I think it's a very good discussion topic. I'll leave it up to you guys to see what you think. I'm Duncannuva saying to you in spirit, and thank you for listening. Catch you all next time. God damn it.